Okay, picture this. You are watching a massive blockbuster movie franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And you know the hero, right? You know they eventually save the world, they achieve this ultimate state of perfection, they get the glowing aura, the whole deal.
Right, the classic hero's journey.
Exactly. But then the studio announces a prequel. And the title of that prequel is Before Buddha Was Buddha.
It's a title that definitely grabs you.
It really stopped me cold.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, we tend to think of the Buddha as this static golden statue. You know, perfect, serene, smiling, completely removed from the mess of actual life.
Yeah, completely untouchable.
Right. But we are jumping into a deep dive today on a book called The Jataka Path by Rafe Martin. And that title implies a backstory where the hero wasn't a hero yet. It implies he was, well, a mess.
It implies he was human, or at least subject to the same chaos that we are.
Yeah.
And that is exactly where Rafe Martin wants us to start. You have to understand, Martin isn't just a storyteller. He is a Zen teacher in the Harada Yasutani line.
Okay, I saw that in the notes. Harada Yasutani. That sounds pretty intense. What does that actually mean for you as the reader?
Well, it matters because that specific lineage is known for being incredibly rigorous.
Okay.
It's a koan-based tradition, which means it's very focused on breaking through logical impasses to find direct experience. It is not about fluffy, feel-good aphorisms at all.
So no inspirational posters with sunsets.
Exactly. So when a teacher from that hard-nosed tradition cracks open these ancient fairy tales, he isn't doing it for entertainment. He is looking for the raw mechanics of how a mind wakes up.
So he's not just, like, reading bedtime stories to us.
Far from it, he's using these stories, these Jataka tales, as tools to pry open the mind.
Let's actually back up just a second for anyone who hasn't spent time in a monastery. What exactly is a Jataka tale?
Simply put, Jataka means birth story.
Okay.
In the Buddhist tradition, these are the stories the Buddha told his disciples about his own past lives. And the crucial thing to remember here is the wordplay in the title we mentioned earlier.
Right. Buddha means awakened one.
Exactly. So by definition, these are stories about the vast stretches of time before he woke up.
It's the blooper reel.
In a way, yes. It's the training montage that lasts for eons. The mission of our deep dive today is to look at how even the figure we know as the Buddha made massive errors. He struggled with greed, he struggled with anger, he made terrible judgment calls. He wasn't just born on a lotus flower knowing everything.
Which, honestly, is a huge relief. Because if the Buddha was just born perfect, well, that's great for him, but it doesn't help me much with my mortgage or, my road rage.
Exactly. If he's a god, he's basically irrelevant to our practice. If he's a being who struggled and figured it out, then he's a map.
That makes total sense.
And Martin makes a very specific point that the Buddha didn't just sit around telling these stories for fun by the campfire. He used them as highly functional tools.
Functional how? Like saying, here's a moral, go be a good person.
No, much more specific than that. Martin notes that the Buddha only told these tales in response to situations that arose within his community.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, imagine a disciple comes to him completely overwhelmed by lust or maybe paralyzed by laziness. The Buddha wouldn't just give a dry lecture on ethics.
He wouldn't just quote the rules.
Right. He'd say, this reminds me of a time countless lifetimes ago when I faced that exact same demon. Let me tell you how I handled it, or how I totally failed to handle it.
So it's an intervention strategy.
It's a way to untangle knots, as Martin puts it. It validates the struggle. It essentially says, I know it's hard, not because I'm all-knowing, but because I spent 1,000 lifetimes messing this up before I got it right.
I really love that image of untangling knots rather than just, learning facts.
It's very practical.
So let's get into the knots themselves. We have a few specific stories from the book to unpack, and I have to say, the first one really threw me for a loop.
You're talking about the forester.
The forester. Yeah. I was reading this, expecting something zen and peaceful, maybe a guy sitting quietly by a stream, and suddenly I'm in the middle of a literal action movie.
It is surprisingly violent for a Buddhist text, isn't it?
Surprisingly violent is an understatement. Set the scene for us, because I think you really need to hear just how unzen this sounds on the surface.
All right. So the future Buddha is born as a forester, essentially a wilderness.
Okay, so he just beats them up. He physically overpowers 500 guys.
That's what the story says.
My question is, how does this make it into a spiritual book? I mean, it sounds like he just had way better cardio and sword skills than everyone else.
It definitely looks that way at first glance. But the real insight, the deep dive moment, comes in the aftermath.
Okay.
The people in the caravan are obviously amazed. They ask him, What is your secret? What magic spell do you have?
And his answer isn't about gym time.
No. He says, I have no secret. I simply had a job to do. Having sworn to protect you, I resolved to keep my word.
Wow.
And then he delivers the line that Martin really focuses on. He says, I didn't cling to life, but used it to fulfill my purpose.
I didn't cling to life. Okay, help me bridge the gap here. Rafe Martin is a Zen teacher. How does a guy fighting off 500 bandits relate to me sitting on a cushion trying to watch my breath?
This is where Martin uses the story as a brilliant analogy for focus. Think about what happens when you try to meditate, or even just when you try to do deep, focused work.
My brain immediately reminds me of like 5 emails I haven't sent, or that weird noise the car is making.
Exactly. Those are the robbers.
Oh.
Martin argues that the 500 robbers are the countless thoughts, distractions, and anxieties that attack the exact moment you try to center yourself. The caravan is your mind or your core purpose.
So the forester isn't fighting actual people. He's fighting distraction.
He's fighting the scattering of his attention. And Martin points out that the forester succeeds because of that specific phrase. He didn't cling to life.
What does clinging to life mean in a meditative context, though?
It means clinging to the self. It's that internal monologue that says, am I doing this right? Is my leg going to hurt? What if I'm wasting my time? I'm hungry.
We get defensive. We try to protect our ego instead of just doing the work.
Precisely. The forester created what Martin calls a force field of resolve. He shifted his focus entirely away from the habitual self-centered self and put it entirely onto the task.
He wasn't thinking, oh no, I might get hurt. He was thinking, the caravan must move.
Right. That is a much more active definition of focus than we usually hear. Usually, mindfulness is sold as this very gentle, soft, drifting thing.
Yeah, like floating on a cloud.
But this story suggests that sometimes you actually have to be a warrior about it.
You do. Martin is telling us that real focus is not passive. It is a refusal to be hijacked. It's the power of resolve versus the weakness of clinging.
The forester didn't survive because he was desperate to live. He survived because he was willing to let go of the me to do what needed to be done.
That's such a powerful reframe. It turns the distraction into an opponent you can actually engage with, rather than just something you're supposed to politely ignore.
And that warrior spirit is completely necessary because the traps on this path are very subtle. Sometimes the trap isn't a robber attacking you. Sometimes the trap is getting exactly what you want.
Which leads us perfectly to the next story, the Nagi King.
Yes.
Now, I have to admit, when I read the setup for this one, I thought, sign me up.
I think most of us would.
So let's set the stage. The future Buddha is a human in this life, right?
Yes. He's a very virtuous man. He keeps all the precepts. He's generally a good guy. But he's incredibly poor. He is struggling just to survive.
Okay.
And one day, he sees the King of the Nagas.
And for anyone who doesn't have a degree in mythology, what exactly is a Naga?
Nagas are these mythical, semi-divine snake beings. They live in underwater palaces. They have immense wealth, jewels, magic powers.
Basically, they live in absolute opulence and ease.
Total luxury. So this poor guy looks at the Naga King and thinks, I want that.
He sets his heart on it.
He makes a wish.
Yeah.
And because he had accumulated so much good karma from being virtuous his whole life, the universe essentially says, okay, granted. He dies and is reborn as the Naga King.
Jackpot. He's got the jewels, the palace, the stress-free life. He made it.
And he immediately realizes it was a catastrophic mistake.
See, this is where I need you to explain the why. Because from a modern perspective, that sounds like the ultimate goal. Financial independence, luxury, comfort. Why does Martin say this is a mistake?
This is one of the most important insights in the book, and it's the one we definitely struggle with the most. The Naga life was a mistake because it was a spiritual dead end.
The dead end.
In Buddhist cosmology, you cannot achieve enlightenment as a Naga.
Why not?
Because it's too comfortable. Martin calls it the rub. The Naga life has no friction. Everything is easy.
And without friction.
There is no heat. Without heat, there's no transformation. The future Buddha realized that he was just parking. He was stagnating in a golden cage.
So he essentially retired to a luxury resort where the elevators don't go to the penthouse. He couldn't go up any further.
Exactly. And the story says he was miserable. He actually had to struggle arduously. It took immense effort just to merit a human birth again.
He was trying to get fired from his life of luxury so he could get back to the struggle.
He needed that friction back.
This brings up a point Martin makes that I think is really difficult for us to swallow.
Wow.
We spend so much time trying to engineer our lives to be easier. We want more money, less stress, fewer problems.
Right.
But Martin is suggesting That the difficulty of human life is actually a feature, not a bug.
It is the central feature. Martin calls this the Goldilocks zone of spiritual practice.
The Goldilocks zone.
Yeah. If you're in a hell realm, there is too much suffering, you're just crushed by it, you can't practice. If you're a Naga, there's too much pleasure, you fall asleep spiritually.
And human life is right in the middle.
Human life is the only place where you get that specific mix of loss, disappointment, misunderstanding, malice, sorrow. Martin lists them all, but also joy and intelligence.
That mixture provides the friction necessary to wake up.
Exactly. So when we are sitting there wishing, oh, I wish I was on a beach with $1 billion and absolutely zero responsibilities.
We're actually wishing for a spiritual demotion.
In a sense, yes. We're wishing away the very conditions that allow us to grow. Martin is basically saying, don't waste this precious human life.
Meaning, don't resent this struggle.
Right. The struggle is the gym. You cannot get strong if you refuse to lift the weight.
That is pretty sobering. It really makes you look at your quote-unquote bad days differently.
It changes the question from, how do I escape this, to what can this teach me?
Okay, so we've had the warrior fighting for focus and the wealthy snake realizing luxury is a trap. But the third story, I'll be honest, this is the one that really got me emotionally. The story of the brave parrot.
Yes. This is a classic. It's often the favorite in the collection because it deals with the concept of intimacy.
And just to be clear, when Zen teachers say intimacy, they don't mean romance.
No, they mean the absence of separation, the collapse of the distance between me and you.
Okay, so the story takes place in a forest fire. And we aren't talking a little campfire. This is a raging inferno destroying everything. The animals are panicking, running for the river. But there's this one parrot.
Right. She sees that some animals are trapped. They are surrounded by flames with no escape. And instead of flying to safety, which she could easily do, she flies to the river.
She dips into the water.
She soaks her feathers, flies back over the fire, and shakes off a few drops. Drip, drip, drip. Then she flies back to the river and does it again.
Now, I have to play the skeptic here for a second. Physics-wise, this is absurd. A wet bird cannot put out a forest fire. It is objectively meaningless.
It is.
And the text says her wings are getting singed. It physically hurts her. Why did she do it?
That is exactly the question the gods ask in the story. They look down and they laugh. They say, little bird, stop. You're going to die and you aren't making a difference.
And usually in our modern world, we tell people not to be martyrs. We say, put on your own oxygen mask first.
True. But the parrot's response is the key to the whole book. She doesn't calculate the outcome. She doesn't sit there and think, can I succeed? She simply acts because she cannot not act.
Because from her perspective, she wasn't separate from the forest.
Exactly. She saw the forest as herself. Martin quotes the Heart of Perfect Wisdom Sutra here. Gone. Gone. Entirely gone.
What is gone?
The barrier, the grit of me that stands between us and the world. Think about it. If your hand is on fire, you don't hold a committee meeting to decide if it's logical to pull it away. You just move.
It's a reflex.
It's a reflex. And that is what Martin defines as true compassion. It's not a duty. It's not, I should help because I'm a good person. It's, that is me burning, so I am bringing water.
Wow. That completely shifts the whole idea of enlightenment. We usually think of it as gaining something. Gaining wisdom, gaining powers.
But Martin seems to be saying it's about losing something.
Losing the wall.
Yes. Martin has this beautiful line, the 10,000 things step in and replace me. When the self is gone, what remains isn't a void. What remains is this natural, fierce, loving kindness.
So the parrot's bravery wasn't a calculated decision. It was just the natural functioning of her true nature.
Exactly.
And the story's a happy ending, right? The gods are so moved they put out the fire.
They are. But Martin warns us not to get hung up on the miracle. The miracle isn't the rain. The miracle is the parrot's mind. That willingness to burn rather than abandon the connection to others.
That's incredible. So we've covered focus, we've covered the value of human struggle, and we've covered this radical interconnectedness. But we have to talk about the mechanism behind all of this.
You mean karma?
The book talks a lot about karma. And honestly, whenever I hear that word, I get a little nervous.
It is a very loaded word.
It feels punitive, like you have a flat tire today because you were mean to a cat in 1400 AD. Feels like a debt you can never pay off.
And Martin doesn't shy away from the weight of it. The Jataka tales show repercussions echoing across lifetimes, but he reframes it in a way that I think is incredibly empowering rather than depressing.
Empowering how?
He focuses on agency. He says, yes, difficulties are the results of past actions, what we've created. But here's the pivot. If we are the cause of our difficulties, we can also be the cause of our own liberation.
That puts the steering wheel back in our hands.
Completely. We aren't victims of a random, cruel universe. We are navigating a landscape that we helped build, and because we built it, we can renovate it.
But how? If I've built a house full of robbers and forest fires, how do I actually fix it?
Martin quotes the famous Zen master Dogen, who calls practice the path of continued exertion.
Continued exertion. I have to say that does not sound like a fun spa day. That sounds like work.
It is work, and this is a critical distinction Martin makes. Spiritual practice isn't an escape hatch.
We don't meditate to make the problems disappear.
Right, we don't practice so the forest fire goes out. We practice to gain the freedom to choose better responses to old problems.
So the problem might still be there. The difficult coworker, the health issue, the bank account balance.
They are all still there, but we handle them less egotistically. We don't add the second arrow of, why is this happening to me?
We just deal with the situation, like the forester dealing with the robbers.
Exactly. We resolve to handle it without clinging.
It's really about shifting from, why is this happening, to, how can I respond right now?
Yes. Freedom isn't the absence of trouble. Freedom is the ability to accept our karma fully and respond with that parrot-like intimacy, rather than the naga-like desire for escape.
That really feels like the thread tying all these stories together. The Buddha wasn't a guy who escaped reality. He was the guy who engaged with it most deeply.
That's it. The backstory is the method.
So let's bring this all home. We started with the idea that the Buddha had a messy prequel.
And we looked at the forester, teaching us that focus is about fighting off the distraction of the self to do our job.
We looked at the Nago King, teaching us that getting everything you want can actually be a trap, and that this messy, difficult human life is the VIP section for spiritual growth because of the struggle.
And we looked at the brave parrot, showing us that when we lose the barrier of the self, we find true intimacy with the world, where compassion becomes a reflex, not a choice.
And finally, that karma isn't a punishment, but a tool for liberation if we're willing to put in that continued exertion.
It's a real call to action. Martin summarizes it well when he says spiritual practice is a serious commitment to doing the real work. It's about how we handle the ups, downs, losses, gains, betrayals, and joys of life right now.
It's not about waiting for some future moment where everything is perfect.
No. And I think that leads us to the most provocative thought Martin leaves us with.
Yeah.
It's a question that I think you, listening right now, should carry with you today.
What is that question?
In the midst of whatever difficulty you're facing, whether it's a literal forest fire or just a bad Tuesday, don't ask how you can one day be free in the future. Don't look for the exit. Ask yourself, how are we free now? Where is our freedom now?
Where's our freedom now? That really transforms the struggle into the path itself.
Exactly. The backstory is the story.
That is a fantastic place to leave it. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us into the Jataka tales.
A pleasure to explore the path.
And for everyone listening, good luck with your own robbers, nagas, and forest fires. We'll see you on the next deep dive.